Hi, guys. Welcome back to Iggy's Toy Parade and Soldier Review. Of course, this is your host, Iggy. And today we're going to look at some 21st century toys, their Ultimate Soldier brand. And I'm not sure who these guys are because I took them out of the packages 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And I don't remember doing that. Now, most of my Ultimate Soldier figures I have in the original packaging, which it was initially they came out in a window box and then to a blister card with 6 figures per package. And then the last series that they introduced was 3 figures on a blister strip card. And they had A and B. So, for instance, the Germans that I bought in set 6 were set A and set B. And by the way, I think that set 6 was the best work they Ultimate Soldier had done. Sorry, I've got the hiccups. Just ate breakfast. I wonder what that's about. Now, I have in the background a painting that a friend of mine, Mike, he bought for like $1. And he gave this to me, and I love it. It's really cool. It was done by an unknown artist, so maybe a student or somebody, but I really like it. Now you'll notice that Paris is not that far from Kharkov. Oh, if only the Russians would have liked that. Instead of Berlin, they would have gone to Paris. Much more fun, I guess. Although I'm not much for French food. I like German food. I'm a meat and potatoes guy, I guess. But you know what, guys? The best food I had in Europe, I thought, was in Vienna. I thought they were really good. Unfortunately, my trip to Vienna, it was not as much fun as it could be because it was on a Sunday and most things were closed. Unlike America, in Europe, they shut down on a Sunday. And here in America, we used to. In fact, I was working at J.C. Penney when they did away with the being closed on Sunday, and they introduced 1 to 5 hours on Sunday, and they used to give us time and a half. But eventually, they did away with that and put us on regular hours, and then they were open, I think, 8 in the morning till 6 at night, and then eventually I think it just took on regular hours like any other day. But back in the 80s, early 80s, Vienna was pretty much shut down on Sunday, but there was some restaurants open and a couple of museums, which I went to a military museum in Vienna that was quite good, and I got to see the blood-stained uniform of Franz Ferdinand. And when you look at pictures of him, he looks like a beefy guy. They used to say that he looked like a butcher because he'd comb his hair straight back and he had a big mustache. Now, my friend Doug was a butcher for many years. Not sure how long Doug worked at the grocery stores, like 30 years or something. At any rate, Doug kind of looked like that too, a big guy that had a mustache. But when you look at Franz Ferdinand's uniform, it looks very small. They actually had it on display in the car that he was killed in. Uh, as you know, the Black Hand, which was considered well, it depends on which side of the fence you're on. It was either a terrorist group or a patriotic group. Um, they were responsible for the death of Franz Ferdinand and his wife in 1914. Okay, so these are, I believe, series 1 and 2. But like I said, I threw out the packaging, so I don't have the others to reference. But with the Germans, they came out with 6 different series, and with Americans, I'm not positive, but I think they only came out with 3, and British they came out with 2, and in Russians I think there was only 1, and Japanese just 1. But I don't want to give you false information. I'm just going from memory, and that could be entirely incorrect. Now, these are all the ones that did not survive in storage, as you can see here. They broke off their bases. Some of them are missing their hands, others have broken rifles. But these are the guys that didn't make it. Now, someone asked me, well, why do you have so many broken items? And I had mentioned, many, many times that my things have been in storage since 1990. And, as I bought new things, I would put it into storage. And the changing temperatures in the storage unit, plus the excessive weight of things sitting on top of the, one box after another, caused all the damages. And one of the things it does, of course, is it causes these. You look, well, what is he shooting at? That looks pretty sad. But don't despair. We're going to get to look at all these figures, and what I'll do is a panoramic sweep so that you can see each one. There is one in particular I want to point out to you, although he is damaged, and that's this one here. Now you can see he's leaning to the left. But when I saw this figure, I knew who it was immediately because of his distinctive style of walking, which they captured here. His name is Heath. He's my friend Carl's brother, and Heath worked for 21st Century Toys. And it actually looks like Heath. So that's pretty cool. Wouldn't it be neat to have an action figure that looks like you that you could have? Well, Heath does have. He has this, of course, and he has other figures that they modeled after him as well. So I guess he's famous, or should we say infamous? I'm not sure. But Heath was in the Civil War group that I was involved with, the 100th Pennsylvania Veteran Volunteers. And I always admired him because he was like kind of guy that I would like to be. And unfortunately, I don't know how to say this. Iggy is kind of a wimp, I guess. Anyway, Heath is not. He's pretty cool. And Heath also, like his brother Carl's father, was in show business. Carl has been in show business too. If you've seen Gettysburg, you've probably seen my friend Carl. He's been in a lot of things. And so that I wanted to point out to you. I'm sorry that he's bent like that, but the hot water treatment will straighten that. I'll straighten you out, Heath. Don't you worry about that. So that, of course, is an issue with being in storage. All right, so let's take a look at the figures. I'll show you first my favorite figure. He's a Fallschirmjäger. And notice that he's looking up at the sky. There's I don't know if it's famous, but it's a well-known photograph of a paratrooper or Fallschirmjäger. Fallschirmjäger literally means falling umbrella hunter. The Germans would always hobble words together when they need when Germans need a new word, they just put a couple words together and there you go. So Fallschirmjäger is falling umbrella hunter. So that's my favorite character. And like I said, there is a photograph, and they were constantly looking up at the sky because they didn't have air cover in Normandy for the most part. There was some, but not compared to the Americans. So that's a cool figure. Since I showed you my favorite, I'll show you my least favorite. That's probably how Iggy would throw a grenade. It looks pretty dumb. Speaking of throwing grenades, when I was in basic training, I got thrown off the range when we had practice with grenades. Uh, I got in trouble two times. One time they threw a practice grenade. You know they would paint them blue, and they were what's the word? Not disarmed, but well, I'll go with that. I can't think of the what they were called again, but they weren't real grenades, in other words. And they threw that into the trench I was in, and I picked it up and handed it to the uh, drill instructor because I thought he dropped it. And he said, "You effing animal, you just killed everyone." And I'm like, "It's just a practice grenade." They didn't like that. I was supposed to react by, yelling "grenade, grenade, grenade." And for years after I got out of the army, if I was gonna fart, I would say "gas, gas, gas." I don't do that anymore, thank goodness. And I try not to release toxic chemicals into the atmosphere. Anyway, so this is my least favorite figure. I do like the base though. Although it looks like he dropped a couple of his grenades there, doesn't it? Let's check out what it says on the bottom. No, it's not really giving us much information there. There appears to be. Why does it do that? There appears to be some information that is so small I can't make out what it is. Now, someone had mentioned they didn't like the bases on Ultimate Soldier. They felt that they were too thick. I could see that if you wanted to mix real dirt or sand, that would be more difficult to cover them up. But everyone's got their choices, right? I like the bases. In fact, this one here is probably my favorite style of base, where someone else would find these two or this one, for instance. I like that one too. This guy's been shot, or maybe he has a headache. I love this officer. Yeah, this is kind of cool. It's sort of almost like a vignette. Is that what the? It's a French word meaning a small scene, and it's of a what do they call those guys? A military policeman, gendarme, or whatever they call them. So that's kind of neat. And this guy here, he's standing behind a little fence. So he's pretty neat. These are, I love collecting these. I'm not sure how many sets I bought of them ultimately. No pun intended. Ultimate Soldier. By the way, Michael Conley is the guy who did this painting. I tried to look him up on YouTube, not YouTube, but on Google, and I couldn't find any references to him. But a shout out to Michael Conley if you're out there. All right, let's come down here and take a look at what we have. This one's missing his base. I had a lot of damages, I'm afraid. But considering that when I found these, none of them were in uh, a bag or a box or anything. They're just rolling around. It sounded like marbles in the storage tub when I picked it up. Now, I talked to Carl about what happened to Ultimate Soldier, and he said that it was owned by a family, and they started to have disagreements about the direction of the company. They started releasing too many products, and they got overextended, and then they ran into financial problems. So it was a sort of a confluence of three or four different things happening all at once that caused their um, ultimate demise. See what I did there? Ultimate demise. But also, one of those issues affecting them was sometime in the late early 2000s, like 2010, around there, people kind of just stopped collecting. And I guess it's because the market was saturated. We had Forces of Valor, you had these. Um, they started releasing Airfix figures again because, they went out of business. And then I think they were bought out by Humbrol or somebody, and they started being released again. There's Airfix guys out there who could give you a better history of that. But there was a lot of product, and after a while, your collection gets a little heavy, and you don't know what to do with it, and you start putting it in storage, which is, as you can see here, not a good idea. This looks like they had an encounter with the Russians here. I think in one of my previous videos, I mentioned that I like Russian World War II movies because they use actual vintage equipment instead of American tanks with a Baltic cross on it. When I was a little kid, I didn't know any better. I thought that, oh, look, it's a German tank. Well, how do you know? It's got the cross on it. All right, well, let's do our panoramic sweep before I sign off. And I'll bag these up and put them back into storage. But this time I will bag them up so that I can give them a little. And these things, my friends Doug and Carl, they would advise me not to throw them out because they enjoy repairing stuff and they have a knack for it. But Iggy doesn't. But I'll listen to him. I won't be stubborn. I'll try and repair them, see how that goes. Okay, so these are the damages. It has a couple of tankers in here. By the way, did you guys read the story about in Hamburg, when the Germans were surrendering back in May of 45? The British would bring them in. Anyone wearing a black uniform was shot out of hand. And you don't think of the British being capable of things like that, but unfortunately, all armies committed atrocities. Nothing in compared to what the SS did to the Russians, but the Russians paid them back, and the British did too. During the Normandy campaign, the SS herded a bunch of British prisoners into a barn and shot all of them and threw hand grenades in there. But they got caught because one of the guys in that barn survived, and so those guys were put on trial. Anyway, the tankers also had black uniforms. So one of the guys, he was like yelling, "No, no, not SS. I'm a tanker." So there was a little confusion there. All right, so we'll just assume that all these guys have been shot. Tried to surrender and got shot. The first time I heard of Americans killing Germans, I yelled at the guy who told me that he was a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge. I found a German helmet in his garage because I was taking care of their place while they went on vacation. And I did a terrible job, by the way, because I was too lazy to stand there and water their grass. They didn't have sprinklers. So I just dropped the hose on the ground and went back home and was watching cartoons. And someone called my mom up and said, "Is your son taking care of the Collinses' place?" And she said, "Yes." "Well, he's flooded the yard and the neighbor's yard." And I went over there, and the water was like 6 inches deep. Apparently, I let it go for like 3 or 4 hours. Can you imagine the water bill that they got? This is in California, so the water bill was pretty steep. Anyway, why did I bring that story up? I'm not sure what the connection is. Oh, the German helmet. And I asked him about it, and he said uh, that he was in the Battle of the Bulge. And then he started to admit to me, "Oh, I said something really stupid, but I was a kid." I said, "Did you ever kill anyone?" Like, what an idiotic thing to ask someone. Uh, he said, "Yes, I did." And I said, "What?" And he's like, they had captured, he and a buddy of his captured uh, some Germans, and uh, his sergeant told him to bring him back to HQ to be interrogated. And it was very, very cold, as you know, during the Battle of the Bulge. So he was marching them back. There's like 3 or 4 of them. And they shot all of them. And I yelled at him. I said, "Americans don't do that." And he just looked at me like, "You're a naive lamb." Uh, that's why those guys never talked about the war. You sit there and freeze, and you lose your best friend, and you get shot and all this other stuff, only to come home and have some little kid accuse you of murder. Jeez. Anyway, Iggy was not the brightest child or adult. I don't know. I do have a penchant for saying things that are inappropriate, but I'm working on it. That's all we can do, right? The purpose of our life is to try and improve our behavior, not to become stagnant. Because you know what happens with stagnant water? It attracts mosquitoes. So we don't want to be like that. All right, let's quickly. I promised you I'd go quickly over this, and I kind of reneged on my promise. So here we go. Do you remember that movie, Battle of the Bulge? Iggy has to fight that battle all the time. He's got a bulge over his belt. But remember when the fictitious colonel, I can't remember his name, he wasn't a real person, but he said there's boys and children. He said, how am I supposed to fight this battle of boys and children? Or rather, old men and children. And one of them starts stomping his foot and starts singing a song. And I used to love that scene so much that I actually memorized the song. Abstem o de Stein, ob die Sonne uns lacht, der Tag glüht und heißt, oder eiskalt die Nacht. Es braust. Don't. I think I fucked it up. Sorry. Abstem o de Stein, ob die Sonne uns lacht. Es braust ist die Panzer im Sturmwind dahin. Anyway, I screwed it up. I get what is it? Stage fright. In fact, I was in a bluegrass band, and the other guys in the band were almost, I would say, professional grade musicians. Ron and Kevin and my brother, those three were excellent. And I couldn't read music. I would flub things up. I would forget what I was doing. And I was supposed to recite a poem to this big crowd of people. And I was dressed as a African explorer, and I was supposed to say this poem, or whatever it was, story about a British explorer who gets pooped on by a monkey. Iggy's humor was pretty stupid even back then. Anyway, I couldn't. I got the first couple phrases out, and then I went blank. And Ron, who was the leader of the group, came up to me afterwards and said, "I knew you were going to do that. I just knew it." And he was very embarrassed. But it actually turned out okay because I started goofing around on stage, and my brother was wearing a gorilla mask, and the kids liked it. They laughed. But I was not a musician by any means. I was what you would call a wannabe. I had long hair because I wanted to be like a musician. I sucked. I'm surprised they put up with me. But it was hard to get people to play the stand-up bass in a bluegrass band in Southern California in the 70s. I don't know. I don't know if it's more common now, but they were stuck with me. I did the best I could, though, but I just wasn't any good. Anyway, so that's that, guys. These are series, I believe, series 1 and 2. There might be others mixed in here because, like I said, it was just a jumbled mess. Oops, sorry, I had my finger in the way there. Let me set this down for a moment. And I'm going to take a look at my journal here. You know what? I didn't mark the page. Did I mark the page? No. 172. Star Wars. Oh, here we go. All right, in 2001. Oops, sorry, I'm showing a lot of feet there. We're having a shoe convention. So we have Ultimate Soldier Series 1. Oh, let me show you the book. This is where I recorded things. And initially I bought quite a number of them. But then they started releasing vehicles, and I'm like, oh God, how am I going to keep up with all of this? But here's Series 1 Germans, Americans, Germans, Americans, Germans, Americans. What's over here? Series 2 Germans, Americans, Germans. No, Series 3 Germans. Series 1 British. Series 3 Americans. Let's see, what do we have here? I bought a lot later. These are the ones that I bought in the early days. There's Ultimate Soldier Japanese. Um, you know, it's funny. I don't remember getting this for Christmas. My brother Ron probably bought that for me. No, not probably. He did. But Ultimate Soldier Russians. And then I started buying other things like I bought a pair of Messerschmitts. I did that in my pants last week. Messerschmitt. I have the vehicles in a different category. Now I just put them all entries all in one category, but uh, anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I want to thank you for coming along and checking out. This was sort of an impromptu uh, video because I found these last. I'm good. My next video is going to be of a carrying case, an unlicensed G.I. Joe carrying case. I thought it was made by Ideal, but I'll have to check it out. My other unlicensed G.I. Joe carrying case I showed to you already, and it's was by Ideal and was unlicensed. And I'll show you the other one next, okay? So, thank you for getting Iggy with it. Thank you for enlisting in the Iggy Army. We're going to all get together at the toy aisle at Woolworths and buy us a bag full of Mark's Japanese for 99 cents. What do you say? I say let's do it. Okay, guys, thank you for getting Iggy with it. I'm going to sign off now, and we'll end with this painting again. I like this. Okay.